I think they fear they're going to be judged and looked down on when they come and open up their financials and lay out all the bills. And you know, it understandably it's embarrassing for them, but there's no judgment, right? It's just, we're here to help you. We're not going to tell you made bad choices. We're just going to help you fix it and make better choices in the future.
This is The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Whether you're a seasoned real estate expert, a first-time home buyer, or if you're simply passionate about hearing small business stories, this is the podcast for you. Join us as we dive deep into the world of real estate and beyond.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to episode 20 of The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. I am your host, Janine Igliani, with my co-host, Ryan Hatcher. And our guests today are the Neeleys. We have Kenn and Heidi Neeley with us today. We're super excited.
Woo.
So excited because Heidi is on our team. So we get to work with Heidi day in and day out, selling real estate side by side, arm in arm. I love it. Yeah. But we also love your husband. Kenn's pretty cool. And can you do something that unfortunately is probably becoming more and more relevant in today's day and age? An interesting statistic I heard recently is that right now we have an all-time high credit card debt. Is that true?
Yeah, and actually Arizona I just heard recently that Arizona has the highest credit card delinquency rate right now in the country. So that has certainly started to translate to more people seeking help with debt. We're seeing that. I have a bankruptcy firm here in Arizona.
Thank you for introducing yourself and telling us what you do.
we help people throughout the state, and we are seeing, more people. Bankruptcies, interestingly, were very low during the pandemic, and I don't think it was because people were better off during the pandemic. I think we all know that wasn't the case. A lot of people had less work, less income, but there was less pressure during the pandemic to deal with it. Creditors were not necessarily pursuing people as aggressively. There was some help from the government. There were different things that I think held debt in abeyance for a little while, but now we're starting to see people needing to deal with it, people with credit card problems, other issues. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, both on the overall economic level. What will we see in the housing market, in the stock market, and then with personal debt and personal credit? Yeah.
So why don't you guys back up and tell us how you met and how you got to where you are today? I would love to kind of hear your story. We'd love that.
Sure. So one fun fact, we met in college at BYU. And one fun fact was that when we very first met, I was actually the one that wanted to go to law school.
Oh.
So that didn't work out. Life throws you curveballs. But anyway, Kenn became an attorney.
So hold on super quick. Did I say this is episode 20? I probably did. Yeah. But we should do like a question and answer, like from this episode, to test people and be like, question, what did Heidi originally want to do? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what attracted Kenn to me, right? Or me to him, I guess.
Just we met at a birthday party for her roommate, and just in introducing ourselves, she already had a plan laid out for her whole life. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. And I felt like at that time in my life, I was just kind of, I felt like I should be in school, but that's about all I really knew. I was kind of
which is honest. Most young kids in college, right? Like that's okay.
Yeah.
So I was definitely impressed with that about her. She seemed very sharp and very just mature for college sophomore.
I love it.
Yeah.
And
so
Kenn was always the networker. Okay. So he had this like little system where he and his friends would say, if they met a girl on campus, even if they didn't really like her, they would always accept invitations to, get togethers that girl was hosting, because every girl has, 4 or 5 roommates.
Yeah,
that's right. And it actually worked out.
That's how it happens a lot, apparently.
Yeah.
My roommate, my friend that came to that party with me, was disappointed because all of Heidi's other roommates, besides her, well, most of them were already engaged. Oh. So when we showed up, he was like, "Oh, she's pretty. Oh, she's engaged. Oh, she's pretty. She's also engaged." So,
bummer.
So how long ago was that?
That was probably 26 years ago, but we've been married for 25 years this
just a few
August.
days ago.
Yeah. Can we talk about what you guys did really quick? Because that was so cool for your 25th anniversary and birthday, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, highly recommended. We jet skied across the open ocean from Long Beach to Catalina Island.
Awesome.
It was so fun. We have jet skis that we take out to the lake, but whole different experience going out on open water.
Yeah.
I can't even. The
was
ocean
scary.
is rough.
Yeah.
When we grew up, we used to go out there, same thing on our wave runners. And I was thinking about that for you guys, like, oh my goodness. I mean, you're probably sore too, right? From jumping those
We were
waves.
so sore, and it was funny because most of it was great, but the last like 20 minutes of the first day when we were almost to Avalon, it got really rough.
Oh, I bet.
And I lost 2 pairs of sunglasses in about 5 minutes.
Oh man.
knocked right off.
I mean,
man.
the jet ski would like go over one,
Yes.
wave and down into a trough, and then the next wave would just blast you in the face. So anyway, but it was fun.
That's cool.
So it's 25 years marriage, and then how many kids do you have, and what are their ages?
So we have 5 kids. Our oldest just turned 23.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we've got a 23-year-old, she'll be 21 in October.
She's married.
She's married and lives in
Yes.
South Carolina. Yeah. And then we have a son who's 18, a daughter who's 15, and then our youngest is about to turn 12 here in a couple weeks. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's fun. Yeah, it gets more and more challenging as they get older, by the way. So
Yes, it does. We
get
all
easier.
know that, the ones of us that have the older kids. Yeah. And you guys actually lived in Vegas for a little while before you came here, right? So what brought you to Arizona?
Well, I did law school in Las Vegas, so that's what took us there. We were only there really just for the time I was in law school. I was working full time there as a software engineer and doing law school at night. So it was a very busy time in our life. And then we moved here because I actually found a job in software development, software engineering at the former Countrywide Bank. So for those of you who lived through the crash
Yes.
of 2007 and 8, Countrywide will maybe bring back not good
Some
memories.
traumatic
PTSD.
memories.
Yeah.
I got into that bank and actually realized pretty quickly that there was a very unethical culture there. And I think we're going to spend a few minutes talking about values and culture today. So they were the opposite. They were sort of the antithesis of what you want in a company. And I recognized that right away. So I was only there for about 6 months. And then I started my own software development company for a little while before the crash in 2008. And then that's when I was worried that I had a partner in the software development company, and he was very financially sound. He had savings and he was doing a very good job. I was a little more leveraged, and I worried that if our contracts dried up that I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. So I told him, let me just do a few bankruptcies on the side just to supplement my income, and he was fine with that. And I put a website up, and before I knew it, I mean, it was 2008. It was just the calls were coming in so fast that I started booking up my whole calendar with bankruptcy consultations. So incidentally, none of our contracts canceled at the software company, and he still needed me. And so I ended up kind of working full-time, helping with the software stuff, and full-time in the law firm for about 6 months. Just really, really busy, but then transitioned into full-time.
Yeah. And the other
practice.
interesting thing at that same time, one of the things that was stretching us is that we owned a home in Las Vegas, and we had purchased our home down here. And so our home in Vegas was on the market, but it hadn't sold. And so we could feel literally the bottom falling out of the market. We held both mortgages for about 6 months.
Wow.
And we got, or maybe it was even 8 months.
Yeah, it was a little while.
But we got an offer on the house in Vegas, and we were so excited. And then they couldn't close the loan because the couple, lending was starting to tighten up. People were seeing what was happening. So then they added like the mother-in-law on the loan and said, give us another couple weeks. And they still couldn't close it. So we kept giving them extensions because we could see what was happening. And finally they took the couple completely off the loan, and the mother-in-law bought it. And it did close. And I remember feeling kind of bad, knowing I was like, this is a really bad decision that they're making, but I'm so glad because we need to sell that house.
Yeah, it was only weeks after that market values went down 15, 20, 30% in Las Vegas. And I looked that house up not too long ago, maybe a year ago, and I saw that they ended up either short selling or deed in lieuing foreclosure just shortly after buying it, maybe 6 months later.
My goodness.
So, yeah.
But the other interesting thing too is that the same thing was happening to our house here in Phoenix, right? So we bought the house. We've lived in the same house now for like 16 years. And our house was pretty quickly way underwater. And so it's interesting to talk to clients who are like, you know, is now a good time to buy? What happens if things go under or down? And I'm like, I've lived through it. I've done it. And you know what? It's all monopoly money until you sell the house. Like that neighborhood was a great neighborhood for our kids to grow up in. The house has been a great house for us. We could afford the payments. And so it truly hasn't mattered. And now it's, you know, recovered and then a ton more.
Right.
So
I love that. No, I love that for so many reasons. I love that you can relate to the clients, both of you, right? Going through that stress of those experiences. But then also to your point, it's so true. If you can afford it today, then who cares what happens with the market, right? Because this is where you're going to be and plan to stay there and weather through that. Because to your point, it is all monopoly money. It only matters if you're going to actually sell or do something with it. So
it's dead equity unless you're using it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that. So flash forward to today, Ken, tell us about your business today.
Yeah, so we kind of hover around the second or third largest bankruptcy filer in Arizona. We have it's kind of an intentional choice to not try to be much bigger, because I feel like we're about as big as we can be, helping as many people as we can without sacrificing the quality of service that we provide. So we're helping as many as we can and still have that very personal relationship with our clients. And we keep in touch with a lot of past clients, people from 8, 10, 12 years ago that I still keep in touch with and find out how they're doing. And in fact, that's one of the most enjoyable things for me, is to be able to hear how people are doing and how they've used the bankruptcy to really turn their whole life around, start businesses and they're very successful, or, you know, get new jobs or go back to school and have new careers.
So there is life after bankruptcy.
Yeah. In fact, I tell people, and I think this is true, right? I can't remember a situation where any past client ever came to me and said that things got worse after, or it was a bad decision. It's definitely a decision that needs to be made very carefully and thoughtfully, but the clients that with our advice have decided let's move forward and do it, universally, to my knowledge, have been able to use it as a turning point that's been positive in their lives.
I love that. So. I know a lot of people struggle with the ethical side of bankruptcy and feeling torn about that, and obviously totally respect whatever their conviction is. One of the things that I had heard a long time ago was that those companies that enter in a credit card agreement with you or whatever do it knowing, right, that is an option, and it's a legal option that you have, and it's done to help you. And so I thought that was like a great aha, right? We just get so convicted sometimes, but know that it is a legal option and it's done so that it can help give you a fresh start if you need it, to your point. And I love what you said, that it's not something that should be taken lightly, right? It should be a well thought through decision. And obviously speaking with an expert, someone like you would be super helpful in that, to walk through what does that look like, right? What are the pros and cons and all of that? Yeah,
absolutely. I tell people that are, you know, that have a very strong feeling of maybe the morality of bankruptcy, and I say, I will give you all the legal advice and tell you exactly what's legal, but I'm not your priest, I'm not your spiritual counselor or whatever. You do need to be able to feel in your heart that it's also the right choice for you in that regard. But what I can say and what I do tell people is, think about why bankruptcy exists. It's not. It helps all of us. It's not just to help you in your situation where you are in financial distress. It's to help anyone who's not in bankruptcy that needs you to come back and contribute to society again after this is all over.
That's good.
And also to be able to take risks and innovate. A lot of our clients, not all of them certainly, but a lot of them are small business owners who've taken chances and it hasn't worked out. And that's what we want in this country. We want people to take chances because we want those huge successes that can come from that. And I think one reason why we have some of the greatest companies in the world are founded in the United States is because we have really good bankruptcy laws that protect people to take sometimes a long shot, right? Sometimes, you see some of these companies failing right now and you're like, they should have known that would
Right.
never pan out, right? But then you look at the companies that have been successful and you think they probably, at the time they were founding this company, it was a long shot that it would work out. And now here we have these massive companies like Amazon and Google and things like that were long shots when they were founded.
So, Ken, most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I would bet that most are one ER visit away from being in real financial trouble.
Yeah.
So what are the triggers? I'm curious. What are the triggers that get people past that line where it's no longer safe and now they're there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few common situations that we see on a daily basis. Probably the most common circumstances that lead to bankruptcy is divorce. And understandably, that's probably largely out of people's control, right? That's gonna happen in some relationships, and so that will turning a 2-income household into 2 separate 1-income households is sometimes too much for either one or both of the spouses. So that's very, very common that divorce leads to bankruptcy. And the other couple others we see very commonly, medical, as you mentioned, the ER visit, sometimes even insured. There are a lot of uninsured people that end up with a lot of medical debt, but even insured people, sometimes there are. I remember one case where we had a client, very good insurance, but they ended up having to get a helivac transport from, if I remember right, from like Coolidge up here to Phoenix, and it was over $100,000.
Oh my goodness!
And the insurance found some way to say that's not covered, so you owe the $100,000, right? And so they ended up having to file bankruptcy because of that. So sometimes there are just things outside of your control, and that's why I'm grateful that bankruptcy can protect those people. And then also business failures is just a real common one. It's just the cycle. Our economy feels like it's been very cyclical over the last 15 years, right? Just big swings in the housing market, construction market, different service markets. So we've had, and have seen recently a lot of construction construction was really, really good for a few years as house values went up, and now it's starting to kind of pull back, and now we're seeing pressure on construction companies and pool companies and those types of companies. So those are the 3 common ones. And I'll anticipate your next question: how do you protect against some of these things? Sometimes you can't, right? I mean, it's just too much. It's too overwhelming. But I do see a lot of situations where there's no emergency savings. There's no backup plan. So anticipate something could happen in your life, right? Anticipate you might have a big medical bill, or you might separate or divorce from your spouse, and you should have some fallback plan. And just save as much as you can, right? That's always a good idea in any event. And then also don't stretch yourself so thin that you're living paycheck to paycheck. Allow yourself the ability to put some money aside, or to have your income go down and still be able to meet your bills. And the most common expense I see where I think people justify spending too much is on car payments. And when
Ken, by the way, you could just talk, because you're everything. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask him that next. Then he goes into it. So take it away.
Having done a few thousand consultations, I kind of know what people are thinking next. So when I see really big car payments, and this is not uncommon for me to see someone who makes a fairly average or even slightly below average income, but with car payments, 2 car payments of say $700 or $800 a month each, right? So $1,600 of car payments, and maybe that's as much as like half of their discretion or half of their total income sometimes. And I say those car payments are really big for income. Well, I have to get to work. And I think, I don't say this because I think it would probably be rude, but I say you don't have to get to work in a BMW 5 Series, right? Like you can get to work in a much more affordable car. And
can I say something though? Isn't that something kind of unique to our times now? These incredibly high car payments, more so than we've ever seen in the past, where people are taking on way more than they can chew. And we just were at our conference, and Gary Keller did a whole analysis comparing that to people's mortgages, and their spending. If they were to be more conservative in their car choice, they could put that money into a house and just do so much better, because a car is a depreciating asset, right? Whereas a home will ultimately always end up going up in value over time. So
I've got
100%.
I've got a friend who's 20, has a $1,200 truck payment,
Yeah.
and he's in sales, and that's okay if you make $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
He doesn't, and so he's selling the truck now wisely. But I told him, I said, you could buy a house almost with that, and that's an asset that's going to pay you,
Right.
Yeah.
and appreciate.
I think another thing too that people tend to do with things like car loans or even mortgages is they trust that person who's extending the loan to tell them how much they can afford instead of doing some critical thinking and actually going through their budget and saying, can I afford this?
You're
They say,
always
well,
gonna
if they
get-
say I can afford this
Yeah.
payment, then I can afford it, which,
You're always going to get approved for more than what you should.
Yeah.
be spending.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we see less people overextended on their mortgage payments because even though sometimes, to your point, Heidi, you're exactly right. The lender might say, "Hey, you're qualified for up to 450," and really, you probably should only spend 350, right? But they do still have those limits. Where with car loans, I don't know if there's really any. Clearly, they're going to be looking at your credit score, but they're not so much looking at your debt to income ratio when they give you a loan on a car. And so you can see car loans that are just very unwise.
predatory
Car
even, I
loans,
would say.
Right.
Almost
Yeah.
even
I
predatory.
heard a good rule of thumb is to buy a car 2 years old with under 20,000 miles on it. Was that what he said? I think so.
Yeah.
So
And then a lot of the depreciation's already
Right.
taken up. Yeah, and that's just a big one. Taking that money that instead of having it go to a large car payment, towards a mortgage payment, towards saving, towards utilizing your companies. If your company has matching on 401k, you got to take advantage of things like
Yes.
that and think of your future. One thing I learned from my dad that we've also done is just being very aggressive about saving for retirement and just being making sure that in the future you won't have financial worries. And some of those retirement savings can be used in cases of emergency. You can take money out
Yeah.
of, you can do a loan, or you could even do hardship withdrawals
Yes.
in cases of emergency. So
Well, yeah, I think your future self will thank you. You're not always going to feel young and capable and able to work as hard as you can when you're young. So it's like, do yourself a favor and take care of yourself now. But then also, maybe Ken can speak to this, retirement savings are protected, right? So if heaven forbid something does happen to you and you have to declare bankruptcy, guess what's not going to get taken?
super good.
That retirement savings, right?
that's a really good point, and something I wanted to make sure I talked about today was just that there are certain ways to spend your money that if you get into trouble, you're able to keep the value you created. And one is in home equity, right? In Arizona, our homestead exemption just went up to $400,000 near the beginning of this year, and so building equity in your home is one of the safest havens for your money if you should get in trouble. And also, as Heidi mentioned, IRAs, 401ks, no limit on that. And we've done bankruptcies for people that had $2 million in retirement savings. And again, this goes to the question of, is it the right thing to do to discharge $60,000 of credit card debt when you have $2 million of retirement savings? Not necessarily my call, right? That's the client's call, but I can tell the client, you can protect your whole $2 million of 401k and file bankruptcy and eliminate your credit cards. And in this particular gentleman's situation that I'm thinking of from many, many years ago, he was retiring. And so he thought, I'm retiring. I'm not going to have the income to keep paying my credit card payment. I don't want to eat into my 401k. I'm just going to file bankruptcy and retire. And that's a perfectly legal, perfectly fine way to go. What breaks my heart is when I see when people come in and they say, I've already gone through, and especially when they're older, right? This happened a lot. It seemed like a lot in 2010. Not as much recently, thankfully, but I'd have people come in and they'd say, to keep my house payment going, I went through my whole 401k and my whole IRA, and they're in their 60s, right? Mm-hmm. And now I still can't do it, so I need to file bankruptcy. And I think if they would have come in before spending all their retirement account, I could have just done the bankruptcy then, and they would still have retirement savings instead of being essentially now just living on Social Security.
So that's a really good question. At what point should someone reach out to you and have a conversation?
It's really never too early. Honestly, I don't think I've ever told someone, I've never been frustrated at someone for contacting me too early. I just had a consultation. I don't do quite as many consultations these days as I used to. I have some fantastic partners that do most of the consultations, but I did one for a friend of a friend about a week ago. And he was in fine shape, right? But I wasn't frustrated. I wasn't like, why are you wasting my time? He was anticipating, what if this happens and what if this happens? I want to just ease my concerns that I'll still be okay. And he had plenty of equity and he had plenty of savings. He had done everything right. And I was able to just tell him, you've actually done everything right. You're doing a great job. Like, don't beat yourself up. Even if this bad contingency and this bad contingency happens, then all you have to do is this. All you have to do is this. Maybe tap a little bit of your home equity. He had good income. Everything was really quite stable for him. But he just was concerned, right? Anxious.
Yeah.
And there's no problem with that. In fact, all bankruptcy attorneys I know in Arizona do free consultations.
Yeah.
And it might be a short 15-minute consultation just to say you're doing just fine.
I love that.
Or anticipate this, but call us only if this happens.
Right.
But if it doesn't, you're fine.
That's kind of like our industry, right? We want to be able to, we're totally open to having that conversation, even if it's something you're just thinking or pondering, like, is this something I want to do? Should I do this? Would this be a good idea?
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation and help answer some of those questions. Super good.
Yeah. What's my house worth? Should I
Right.
think about maybe getting a home equity loan on it, or should I think about selling it? And
should I remodel the kitchen?
Yeah.
Put
Right.
a pool in, all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so smart to start that process early.
Yes.
Rather than late. Don't Google it and then trust the random information you're getting on the internet. Talk to an expert.
Well, and don't look at Zillow for your home value because often that's wrong. Had a client recently that thought her home value was X amount of dollars. I don't even remember. After sitting down with me, it was $50,000 more. And had she just trusted that, right? So that's a lot of money. So talk to a professional.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk about your team. This is something, obviously, us having a real estate team, we really value. What are some things that are important to you in who you surround yourself with?
Yeah. And I'm going to make sure I defer some time to Heidi on this too, but we have a set of values that we really adhere to. And these developed organically at my firm. It wasn't like I just listed them out one day and said, everyone is going to live by these values. What happened is after the firm was really kind of rolling, and maybe after actually we had been functioning for about 5 years and had a sizable team of 12 or 14 people, we started to say, hey, we see that among us, we really seem to represent this value and this value and this value. And one of those is, I'll just talk about one of them. One of those is we love our clients, which really boils down to empathy, right? It's not, I had an attorney who worked for me and he didn't like that value because he's like, to me, love invokes romanticism. And I'm like, no, it's not, it's different, right? This is like the brotherly love. This is like the love we see in the Bible, right? That you love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. And it boils down to empathy, understanding. It boils down to like going the extra mile to help them in a time when we recognize that they're in a time of need and stress and distress even. So that's been really important to hire and evaluate and bonus and even fire based on whether or not my team lives those values.
I love that.
And it goes, as that's really exemplified among my staff, it means that our clients tend to have some of the same values because they're attracted to work with us, to hire us, and other partners. And, Heidi will share some of her experience around that. But it's just, I think one of the key things that as a business owner that I've made important as I've made it, and I've made a priority that has really worked. Mm-hmm. And that I think was a good choice to kind of make sure that I emphasized values.
I love that.
In my firm.
Yeah. I totally feel like we do the same, but go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah. I just, I think it's an outlook on life. It's not even about business specifically, but just surrounding yourself with the type of people who have your same values. Mm-hmm. And so I, as a little side note, I actually got into real estate because I had made the choice that I wanted to stay home when my kids were small, and I had done that. And as I mentioned earlier, I had wanted to go to law school, but at this point in my life, I'm like, 3 years, that's a long time. So I saw
kind of
a
like
need.
Lawyers though, Heidi.
Oh, we actually do practice law. We do. According to the Arizona State Constitution, we're practicing a really limited form of law. So I still got my way.
There you go.
But I saw a need in Kenn's company. And so not having worked for about 20 years, I was like, okay, what am I going to do to step into, a role that I want to do? And he had all these referrals coming in, and he would tell me, I'm giving these referrals to this real estate agent and they're not picking up the phone. And I was like, gosh. Are you kidding me?
Yes. Yeah.
So many leads I sent to this one real estate agent that he wouldn't even answer the phone.
Yeah. Shame on him. But
probably a dozen at least.
If he's watching this, he's probably kicking himself.
So anyway, I saw this opening and a place where I could help, because we talk shop all the time. I feel like I should have an honorary law degree just listening to him.
But I'm sure our spouses feel like that with their real estate license.
Exactly. So anyway, I got started and pretty quickly found that it worked well, that we worked closely together. So I take referrals from his clients, and often it's people who are in these sticky situations where they need an agent who is not only good at real estate, but has knowledge of or access to an attorney to communicate well to get that job done.
It really is like an ideal scenario. Those clients are probably in the absolute best situation working with the two of you, because you guys work, so obviously being husband and wife, so closely together. And that's such an important aspect on each side, right? Selling a home when you are in bankruptcy or have had one, and vice versa, is like, there's so many moving parts. I've had many times where clients come to me, not told me because they were embarrassed, and we can't sell their house, right? And so being able to have you two work together, that's a huge blessing. Yeah.
And we've pulled in great lenders and things as well who all work really closely. But I'll give you an example. So people in the service industry, real estate agents, attorneys, we're not like a commodity. We're not like a bag of rice. When people go to the store to buy a bag of rice, they just want the cheapest bag of rice because they're all the same, right? But in the service industry, it's not that way. And so just an
stop right there, because that is huge.
Yeah.
That is huge. And that is, I mean, if we were, then you could automate any of our jobs and let AI take it over. But unfortunately, it's not. It's And
that's why results vary. And that's why I think you see some of these big iBuyers come in and fail, because there isn't that human touch. But when you find that team of people who are willing to work hard for you because they love you, like Ken was saying, the results can be fantastic. So I had a deal. I was helping a client of Ken's to sell their house. And well into this deal, we found out that the title company had basically been sitting on their hands. And we needed some information from the IRS, which, this is maybe a week to 10 days before closing. And you know how fast the IRS works?
No.
So the title company kind of said, I guess we'll get back to you in, 21 days or whatever timeline the IRS is giving us. And I said, nope, that is not good enough. And so I talked to Ken, and this client, I don't even know if the client really realized that they had, a high dollar per hour attorney working for free for them, contacting the IRS. And between Ken and I think it was actually you, ended up getting the payoff amount they needed. But we got it closed on time.
Amazing.
And I don't know if you could find another, attorney and real estate duo that would have gotten that done, because most people would have just said, well, it's the IRS. We can't, there's nothing we can do. But I was like, no, we're not taking that as an answer.
I just thought of another good example. So one of your earlier on sales, this was a house that was just going to foreclose, and it was actually set to auction at a price where the homeowners, they had abandoned the house during the bankruptcy. They had gotten divorced, and they didn't feel like the house had any equity. It was in very rough shape. And so they just felt like it doesn't have any equity. They were just going to let it foreclose. As it was getting really close, I had a quick look at it, and I had Heidi take a quick look at it, and she said, I think there's actually a little bit of equity here. Mm-hmm. And so I called those clients and I said, why let your house foreclose? It'll cost you nothing to try.
Yes.
Just hire my wife, just give it a shot. And I mean, they got quite a bit of money. Each homeowner, each spouse, and the bankruptcy estate even got some money to pay creditors. It was like an ideal situation where everybody benefited, instead of just the house going back to the bank and not getting anything.
I love that.
And on that one, I had my daughter. I hired my daughter to help clean the house because it was pretty rough. And this was back when the market was very hot, but still, I just think when you find that right person in whatever service it is you're hiring, you got to look for that person who does things because they love helping people, not just
totally
because they're
agree.
after a dollar or after a paycheck. Like,
Yep. We talk about this all the time. It really changes the process. And because we know, because we work with agents like that on the cross sale side, when they're simply after a paycheck, the care for the client completely goes out the window. It is all in what's their best interest, what's going to get this deal closed the fastest. And that is not who you want working on your behalf on one of the biggest transactions of your life, right? You want someone that's going to advocate for you, protect you, and really look out for your best interest, because it can make a lot of difference in terms of what you ultimately put in your pocket at the end of the day.
Right.
One of my favorite stories, I tell this all the time, is a client came to me after all was said and done, but she had her house listed with another realtor. They were buying a new home and they were coming up at the end of their contingency time frame, unable to sell it. Came to me, I took the listing over, got it under contract, sold it for more than what they were originally planning on. They were still able to buy their house. They took my husband and I out to dinner, and he said actually, who was more quiet, he said, I just want to thank you because of what you did. Not only were we able to buy our dream home, but we were able to take the additional money we got and bless each of our kids. And one of their kids needed a major car repair, right? Things like that. I mean, it was just like amazing because I was good at what I did, right? And so it does make a difference when you have that on your behalf. And that's what I think we pride ourselves on. And that's why we love working with you, Heidi, because you totally are having those same values.
Yep.
So
same standards. That's why we get so many 5-star reviews, because people feel the difference.
right.
Right.
Even if the dollars and cents at the end of the day don't change, you feel loved. You feel loved and seen. And I think that's what we all want, right? We want someone who will work for us, work with us side by side, and really go after what it is we want and need, and that is, you can't put a price on that.
Well, and I would say, especially when you're going through a bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy, that's a really tough place. Like nobody wants to be sitting down with you, I'm sure, right?
Yep.
And so to know that someone's genuinely going to care and really help you and talk through what are those options and here's all this info so that you can make a good decision, that's huge.
So and without judgment, just, to help them, right? I think they fear they're going to be judged and looked down on when they come and open up their financials and lay out all the bills. And it understandably, it's embarrassing for them, but there's no judgment, right? It's just, we're here to help you. We're not going to tell you made bad choices. We're just going to help you fix it and make better choices in the future.
So I was just looking up 7 different types of love. You triggered it.
Oh, yeah.
And agape is the one. Selfless and universal, it says. One of a kind love, it's an empathetic, selfless love for others that includes a love for God, nature, strangers, and the less fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
awesome.
I think that's one thing that makes Kenn a great bankruptcy attorney is he comes from a place of knowing who he is and that he's also not perfect, right? And so what a beautiful gift to give to someone to say, I'm like you. None of us are perfect. We're all beggars, right? Mm-hmm. There was only one perfect person who walked this earth, and it's not me. Mm-hmm. And so I think they can feel that. They can feel that he is there to not judge them, but just to help them to get to a better place.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's those hard times that make you appreciate coming out on the other side, right? And hopefully going through some of those hard times, you make better choices going forward. So that's how we learn and grow and all of that.
Well, that's really good to talk about because attorneys and realtors are not always looked at as the
good guys.
Yes.
And gals.
Just the industry or just, the aura sometimes. So that's good to talk about.
Yeah.
What else should we have asked you guys that we didn't?
I think we did a really good job of covering a wide variety of stuff. So I don't have a whole lot.
How can someone contact you, Kenn, if someone does have a question?
So probably the best way is to start on the website because that has all the contact information, has information about me, my staff, what we do.
What is it?
It's neeleylaw.com, and let me spell that out because Neeley isn't spelled how most people expect. It's NEELEYLAW.com. And you can see a few cool videos on there, some interesting information on my staff, and then the different services we provide, which include bankruptcy, but also IRS tax problem resolution. Heidi mentioned our connections at the IRS that saved us in that deal. we can help people even if they don't file bankruptcy, but they just have tax debt, to do installment agreements, to do offers in compromise where they might be able to reduce their tax debt. And then we're doing quite a bit now with student loans for people that have very burdensome student loan debt, to be able to give them some advice. So.
Hey, really quick before we wrap up, any tips for college students? Because this is one thing, we've been having this conversation with my daughter. She going into college is going to be bombarded with people wanting to sign her up for credit cards. And I have told her, say no, just say no. Any tips? What would you say?
Well, that's a great start. Just say no. I myself got a few credit cards my freshman year in college. And then I went on a church mission for 2 years, and I had to use one of the credit cards for a medical bill, interestingly enough, on my mission. And I was just counting on my dad to pay the bill when it came to the house, which he didn't do. So I returned from my 2-year mission with a, terrible credit score, 90-day delinquencies and everything, and getting married shortly after that. And
I married potential, not a great credit score.
So not getting them is certainly the best way. There is an argument to be made for, maybe a small card that you can use to start to establish credit history.
Or their parents could put them on theirs.
Or parents could do authorized user, because this is not well known, but it's a great secret, which is authorized users get the positive credit reporting if the card is paid on time by the parent or whoever the card owner is. So that's a great way to do it. My daughter has it's essentially a secured card. She had a different name for it. There's some marketing term that the company uses, but it's basically, she sent in $300 and her limit is only $300.
Nice.
So she couldn't get herself necessarily in trouble by extending too much credit, but it does start to establish a credit history for her. And then just, take advantage of going to colleges that are as affordable as possible, getting as many scholarships as possible, working during school if you can, and minimizing loans. It's maybe not possible for every person to not get any loans, but minimizing the loans and keeping them as low as possible. We did okay at times. I was working full time during law school, so we didn't get nearly as many loans during law school as a lot of my peers were getting. But there were times where we took loans that we probably didn't really need. And because it was such easy money to get, right? It was like, oh, do you want this $5,000? Sure, why not? I'll just buy a car with it or something. Even though I don't really need it for school.
Right.
So those weren't the wisest choices. I would advise my kids not to do the same. And just limit those loans, and then be prepared to work on them and dive in on paying them off right after school.
I love it.
There are several kind of influencers out there that talk about how to just really attack student loan debt right after getting out of school. Make it your top priority to just get rid of it. I have people, professionals, attorneys, my age that have been practicing for 15 or 20 years that still have student loans.
Wow.
And just it's a crazy.
It's like a burden. Yeah.
But it's still that's still hanging over their head, right? Mm-hmm. And even though the balances are probably getting low, it's still just having that hanging over your head for 20 years. Not ideal.
I think as a parent too, I don't have the attorney advice, but as a parent, I would say teaching your kids the value of money before college, right? Requiring them to work and get jobs is really helpful, because if you don't appreciate how much it costs to earn that dollar, you're not going to really worry about going into debt. But when you know how many hours it takes to earn $100, you're going to think about it.
So when I first started my career in the insurance world, I would see a lot of college graduates come in and then they'd spend a ton of money on their vehicles and this lifestyle, and they had to have been in massive debt. So I went around, and I did it for a couple of reasons, but I went around our first apartment and I videotaped the apartment. Then I did it in our duplex. Then I did it in our first house and our second house. And one of the main reasons why is because I want to show my kids where we started.
I love it.
Because when they leave my house, I don't want them to think that they are going to be able to handle this type of lifestyle that we've spent 20 years accumulating and working on. Yeah. So hopefully that will work in and of itself. But
one thing that we've done with our kids too is, instead of just giving them money for college, I actually heard this from my brother-in-law and I loved it. We match what they make. So if you want to work hard and go to a really good school, then we'll go there with you. But if you're not going to work that much, you're not going to get as much from mom and dad. So we try to incentivize them to work.
Yeah.
Including matching scholarships. So if they were able to get I think one of our daughters got a $2,500 scholarship, and we gave her $2,500 because she worked to earn that.
Yes.
And that's the same as if she had gone and worked at McDonald's and earned $2,500.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, if it had been a Harvard scholarship, we might have had to revisit that.
Right.
Quarter
oh my
percent.
gosh.
Yeah, 25%.
Okay, I have a fun question to end on. This might be too honest, so I guess I say would answer it whatever you're comfortable, but to share a like dumb financial thing you've done, like something stupid financially that you've done.
Ooh.
What do you guys got?
I could rat Ken out.
Everyone
Feel
has
free.
done something
Feel
dumb.
free.
Yeah.
I already shared
Well,
I already shared the credit cards. From,
Yeah, Ken
when I was
Ken
18.
alluded to it, but while he was in law school, and we were married and had 2 kids, eBay and eBay Motors was like becoming a really big thing back then. And he was literally sitting in a law school class and saw this Range Rover, a used Range Rover for sale that he thought was some great deal, and bought it without talking to me.
Oh.
Yeah, that didn't go over too well. We
bet.
didn't need it. We
Yeah.
had 2 cars that worked great. So he just thought it was going to be great. And he was going to like flip it or resell it, or I don't know. It was not great.
Yeah, I didn't make any money off that one. Yeah, that was my ADD. And during class, I'm like, eBay Motors. Ooh, that's a good deal. Range Rover. That's a cool car.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's too funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a lesson learned
That's
for
too
sure.
funny.
But-
And I'm a saver, so I don't do too many wild financial things. But, I think being too much of a saver can sometimes also be a mistake. So it's been good in our marriage that he's the spender and I'm the saver, and we kind of balance each other out.
Okay, I love that.
I know
Ryan,
people
what
that
you
will
got?
drive miles to save a couple cents on the gas.
Right? Does that really? Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense. I don't know. Okay, what you got, Ryan?
Oh gosh. I luckily was not into credit card debt in high school or in college. I had some friends and they had $20-some thousand in debt in credit card debt alone when they graduated from college.
Well, and really quick, I think that unfortunately this generation today is super susceptible because they're so trained for that instant gratification.
Yes. Hence the video I just talked about.
Right. Unfortunately, you got to save for big purchases, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah, I spent a couple grand one time when we were first married. It was good intentions, but it was on real estate investment training to get ahead and figure out how to do this, and I just wasn't ready, and it didn't work out at the time.
So you got sucked into like some fancy seminar.
Yep. So I got the cart before the horse, and you live and you learn.
Yeah.
That's called
But
an educational fee, right? You
what's-
learned something from it, just not what you thought.
Yes. And what's cool about it though is I still have the material that was given, and I now understand it. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah,
So,
so
now you're
it did. I'm gonna
came
say,
full circle.
It did eventually, 15 years later.
Pay off.
I don't know. For me, I'm trying to think of some dumb things. I have made plenty of dumb decisions. I think when I grew up, or when I started working, I worked full time from the time I was 16 on, and I made really good money. I didn't know what to do with it. And so I look back and I wish I would have done the Roth IRAs and put my money into those a lot sooner, because that interest compounds.
Yep.
Had I done that, I would have been in a much different position. But we too got caught up in all the credit cards when the market crashed and my husband got laid off, and we thought it would be smart to consolidate and do one of those like companies where they
Debt consolidation.
Yes. And I think that was dumb. I should have just negotiated with the credit card companies directly.
Yeah.
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 So live and learn.
I think the biggest mistake that most people make is understanding the difference between liabilities and assets and go buy assets.
Ken's got a great story about that.
Yeah.
About
the woman that
the credit card.
yeah, I had
Let's hear it.
I had a consultation with a woman who her husband had just passed away, and she was an older lady. I think she was probably in her late 70s, early 80s, quite elderly, and she had never managed the money at all. I could just really hardly even understood it. But someone had told her, "You're in trouble. You need to go talk to a bankruptcy attorney." So she came in, and she was showing me her her credit card statements, and I would ask her, like, do you have any savings? And she'd say, well, I have about $80,000. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good. That'll help. And then we keep talking past each other. Like she's not quite understanding what I'm saying. I'm not understanding what she's saying. And what I ultimately figured out is she thought that the available credit still on her credit cards was savings.
No.
She thought that
So
was her
she's
money.
like, well, I can still spend $80,000 on these 3 cards. Therefore, I have $80,000. That's my money.
Oh,
But
wow.
not your money, right? And so I'm educating her on just what debt it, like she didn't even have a concept really of debt. So yeah, understanding debt and how, and understanding interest. Janine mentioned just like, it is so powerful when it's working for you, and it's so scary when it's working against you.
Yes.
Who said it was the 8th wonder of the world?
Yeah,
really?
there's some great some great quotes about it, like it being your master. It can be your greatest tool, or it can be your master, right?
Yeah.
It can be controlling you. And so just understanding that, going through some even some of the anecdotes that talk about how, looking at compounding interest. There's a really good one from a book I read by Tony Robbins, where he talks about if you just bet 2 cents on a hole of golf and you say, we're going to double or nothing on this hole of golf through 18, and you win all 18 holes, it turns into some astronomical number, millions of dollars, right? Like starts at 2 cents and ends at millions of dollars. And that's the power of compounding interest.
I love it.
And so use that for you. The younger, the better. Like I tell my 18-year-old, even if you can only put $500 in a Roth IRA, that's going to be interest free in 45 years when you retire. Imagine what that could do. So, I think that's a great point, is good just stuff. Understanding interest, and understanding debt, and understanding assets that pay. Your house, your home that you live in is a great asset for protecting some of your money. It's not a money producing asset though. That's even a different category of asset that can produce income for you, where your home can store some value. It's a great way to store some value and protect it from creditors even. But don't think of that. Just don't think I have home equity, therefore I'm all set.
Right.
Look for other ways to create income producing assets.
Multiple streams.
And I think too, some people just haven't been taught, like that example you just shared. They just don't know.
Yeah.
And so if we find ourselves in that place, we can always learn. That's the great thing about this
too late to
day
start.
and age today is we have access to so much knowledge. So I would recommend everybody read The Richest Man in Babylon. That's a great little parable. It's not like super
easy
dense
read.
and hard. Easy, but it teaches you about how interest can be your friend.
There are reading requirements in my household, and they earn money by doing it. But that is one of them.
I love it.
Rich Dad Poor Dad's another one.
That's another good one.
Yeah.
Well, this was so good. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
We love it. This was a great episode 20. I really feel like we should do a giveaway. So if someone is still listening, we're going to have some sort of giveaway tied to this.
You better listen to the episode.
Pop quiz.
Pop quiz. Thanks, guys. We'll see ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Make sure to follow or subscribe to the Home Selling Team on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify to stay up to date with our podcast.